Hey, y'all, it's Brandon Adams, the host of DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Marco's Pizza. Happy Monday to you. Hope it was a happy weekend for you. I guess mixed feelings about the Georgia win versus Tennessee. We'll obviously spend a lot of the week talking about that, heading towards Vanderbilt on Saturday night, the final of the tune-up games before, in some respects, the real season begins for Georgia. It was great to see so many of you in Athens on Saturday. You may notice I got a little bit of a weird setup today. My computer's on the other side today for those of you that watch regularly. I had to put the old charger in here today. I didn't recharge this thing coming off of Saturday night, so I'm going to be a little bit kind of off balance with that, but hopefully that won't impact the show too much. I'm glad you're with us. Chip Towers later on, a lot on Fromm and Fields and all the other goings-on of the game against Tennessee on Saturday as DawgNation Daily, presented by Marco's Pizza, begins right now.
From DawgNation.com, this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Marco's Pizza. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
The reality is Georgia's got a lot of issues. There are some things that need to be corrected if Georgia is to win the SEC once again, get back to the college football playoff once again, maybe have a chance to actually win a rematch against Alabama and hoist a national championship trophy at the end of the season. I think we all saw on Saturday, reinforcing what we'd seen the week before against Missouri and maybe the week before that against Middle Tennessee State in some respects. A lot of moments here this season that Georgia right now is just not a perfect team. That's the reality. That is just the cold, hard facts. However, the optimistic assessment, the optimistic viewpoint is, and I mean this sincerely, there is nothing so wrong with Georgia that it can't be fixed. Over the course of a long season that could end sometime in January, over the course of the next 2 weeks before Georgia's first real legitimate stiff test at number 5 LSU in 2 weeks. Georgia's got some issues, but there's nothing on this team that can't be corrected. There's nothing so broken, so wrong, so obviously deficient that only better personnel by another number 1 class recruiting-wise in 2019 that can come in and sort of clean that up. That's not where Georgia is. Georgia is still okay, if not quite as good as maybe some Georgia fans would hope this team would be. The only thing, then, I think, that could truly derail this team, because the honest truth is, I expect improvement to take place. I think in some form or fashion that's going to happen here. I think even against LSU, Georgia will probably play much better than it has through its first 5 games thus far this season, and it probably will play better at LSU in 2 weeks, and it's going to play against Vanderbilt on Saturday. These are just sort of the way these kinds of things work out from time to time. But while I do expect that improvement to happen with what's going to happen on the field and the play calling on offense or the issues on defense and kind of everything in between, the only thing that I think looms as a real legitimate danger for Georgia, the only thing that I think could truly knock this team off target, get this team derailed off the tracks of being able to be back where it was a year ago, maybe even improve on all of that, the only thing that could actually bring that to a screeching halt is a true, honest-to-goodness, legitimate quarterback controversy. And obviously what makes me different on this show is that I am a fan. If you're watching the show on video right now, many of you don't. Many of you listen on podcast form. Many of you listen on the radio. You have no idea what I look like in this DawgNation World Headquarters studio where I do this show from every single day. But if you were watching the show right now, you know, like many days, I've actually got the Georgia gear on. This is the shirt that I was given from the UGA bookstore on Saturday. Really good-looking stuff, and I'm proud to wear the Georgia G when I come in here and do this show. I'm proud to be a fan of the Georgia Bulldogs. And so from fan to fan, because 99% of the people who listen to this show right now are also Georgia fans, here's what I'm telling you. If you as fans sort of divide yourself up on I think that Jake Fromm's the quarterback for Georgia, and I don't even want Justin Fields to come into the game, or I think Justin Fields is the right quarterback for Georgia, and the sooner that James Coley and Jim Chaney and Kirby Smart realize that and shove Fromm out of the way and push Justin Fields into the game, then Georgia's going to be the team it needs to be. The more you guys and gals sort of allow yourself to kind of line up on opposite sides of this thing, Fromm versus Fields, Fields versus Fromm, and picking a side to be on, and then looking for faults in the other guy to validate the point that you are believing in, the more you allow that to happen, I think the more you create a scenario where Georgia could finish far lower than our preseason expectations. I do truly think it's that serious. This is one of those things where fans could have an impact on the way the media covers this story, and eventually having an impact on the way that the players relate to each other, and eventually having an impact on just how focused and dedicated this team remains on the task at hand. This is one of those deals where fans, because there are so many, I mean, let's face it, there are like 500,000 people that read DawgNation in some form or another over the course of a given football season. That is a gigantic number of people It may even be more than that by now, but it's a huge, huge number of people who interact with the content that we do here around DawgNation. And it's a big enough group of people that if they all, sort of start, swimming in the same direction, it can have a positive impact on the program. But if they start swimming in opposite directions towards each other in some sort of almost like political style faction, half against one and half against the other, then that's the kind of thing that can be felt. When that many people do anything in the same direction or anything in opposing directions, the reverberations are going to be noticeable. So let me start the show this week by saying that it is sort of a weird situation right now. I don't know how things are going to play out with Jake Fromm, who did some good things on Saturday, and Justin Fields, who when he came in also did some good things on Saturday. In some respects, some of the things that Fields did were things that Georgia at the moment desperately needed. I don't know how this is going to play out, neither do you. But what I do know is that fans turn this thing into a real-life controversy when I'm checking the Facebook comment section and the YouTube comment section, where it's, arguing and fighting and squabbling over and over again, not only with the season at that point in time not be enjoyable, but I think the actual product on the field has the potential to suffer because that's how influential Georgia fans could be. Now, as you know, Kirby Smart did talk a lot about this after the game on Saturday. We're going to play one clip on this because a lot of the other things that Kirby ended up saying were just sort of reverberations of the same stuff. We saw some of Fromm. We saw some of Fields. We saw Fields do some things that Fromm's incapable of doing, but we saw some of the things that Fromm did were things that Georgia also needed there at the moment. And as of right now, at least publicly, the public stance of Kirby Smart is he doesn't know how any of this is going to play out, but he's glad he's got two good quarterbacks. Here's Kirby on the subject.
I thought both guys did some good things. I think Justin provided us a spark that we needed at times, and he's a very diligent worker. He's been meeting extra. He's coming in to learn things and pick them up, and he gives us an asset to the offense that sometimes provides us a spark we may need. I thought Jake did a great job commanding the offense, understanding where to go with the ball. If we don't give up pressure on some of those third downs, he probably even hits even bigger plays, because there were some plays out there that we left hanging that a couple of them he didn't have a chance because the pressure in the pocket. So we got to do a better job protecting him. But I was pleased with both those guys play. They're good football players.
Was it the plan, Coach, to get him in for one snap? I know you said in the past his nerves are a little high when he first comes in. Was it the plan to get him in for one snap, get him back out?
The plan is there is no plan. Next question.
Kirby Smart says the plan is there is no plan. He repeated that over and over again. When Chip Towers is with us in a couple of minutes, we'll talk to him more about that idea of, is there really no plan? Is this something that Kirby Smart's trying to keep a secret, or is this the kind of thing that Kirby Smart's just sort of letting this play out to see how it turns out? We'll obviously talk to Chip Towers about that a whole lot in just a moment, and probably with all of you, we'll talk about that here over the course of the week. But I think it's very interesting what Kirby Smart says. As I've been saying, for months and months, even predating the start of the season, I think having good players is never a bad thing. The fact that Georgia has two good quarterbacks, in this case, I think is also a good thing as well. And I think it's an artificial choice to say to Kirby Smart, you must choose one over the other. You must play one exclusively and sit one unless, it's a traditional backup role assignment type situation there. To me, that's old school thinking. That's not what modern football looks like. I saw lots of examples around the NFL on Sunday where backup quarterbacks were playing, where quarterbacks shared time. I saw that some with Baltimore. I saw that some with New Orleans. I saw multiple quarterbacks playing in the NFL yesterday. I don't know why in this case Georgia necessarily has to be all that different there in that regard. And there's also something I said on our Northside Hospital postgame show on Saturday night that some of you didn't necessarily like. I want to try to clarify that for a moment here. I said that the real issue for Justin Fields and Jake Fromm right now is, and this is something that we predicted might happen during the offseason, that one of the reasons why Fields needs to play right now is not because Jake Fromm's not getting the job done. The truth is his overall number's not bad. He was about 73% completion percentage on Saturday, 8.4 yards per attempt, a little lower than what you've come to expect from Jake Fromm. But the overall passing performance from Fromm, not necessarily all that bad, especially when you consider the fact that there were a couple drops that could have even been bigger plays there, maybe a couple of other deep throws that had a chance to be made. The overall numbers for Fromm, not that bad. But one of the reasons why Georgia needs Fields in the game right now, even if that comes at the expense of Fromm, is right now Justin Fields is Georgia's best running back. And if you really want to look at the biggest issue facing the Georgia offense right now, it's not what's going on at quarterback. Is it deficient? Who should it be, Fromm and Fields? Buried below the surface here, there's an issue with Georgia's running game. Maybe it's the offensive line. Maybe it's the running backs. We don't really play the blame game here on DawgNation Daily all that much. But one of the things you see is Georgia, in terms of asserting its will, dominating at the line of scrimmage, making it, suffocating the opponent with a dominant running game. You're not seeing as much of that from Georgia right now as you've seen before, which is one of the reasons why Fields needs to be in, because when he does come in, he gives you that dynamic element with his legs. Let me give you a stat that backs this up. I wrote about this a little bit on Friday at DawgNation.com with my By the Numbers piece. I hope you had a chance to check that out. If not, let me piggyback off of what I said there. If you look in particular at Georgia running back, I mean the ones that play the most. I'm talking about Swift and Holyfield and Harrion, and I'll add James Cook in there when he occasionally gets a carry. When you look at those 4 running backs right now, while the overall numbers are pretty good, even if a little bit less than what Chubb and Michelle mostly gave you a year ago, there's one area right now in which the Georgia offensive line needs to perform better and the Georgia running game needs to perform better. Georgia on first down, once again on Saturday, was below average when it comes to those successful running plays on first down. The advanced stats guys will tell you that on a first down run, when it's 1st and 10, you want to get 5 yards. You want to put yourself in a second and short situation or second medium situation, setting yourself up for a 3rd and short. A successful running play on first down is 5 yards. Well, Georgia failed to do that more often than not on Saturday. They had successful runs, which are 5 yards or more on first down, just 32% of the time on Saturday. 6 times and 19 tries on first down runs. That's not my intention to play blame game here with the offensive line or the running backs. But that's the real issue for the Georgia offense right now. It's not what Jake Fromm did or didn't do. It's not what Justin Fields did or didn't do. When you think about going to LSU in a couple of weeks and everything beyond that, that's what you think about. That's the important issue for the Georgia Bulldogs right now. And that's one of the reasons why Justin Fields needs to be in the game, because there's no one with the ball in his hand more dynamic with his legs on this Georgia roster than Justin Fields is. This is a fascinating subplot. I can't wait to watch it play out more. I'm entertained by both these guys, by both Fromm and Fields. I just hope that fans don't turn what is a competitive situation into a controversial one. My name is Brandon Adams, DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Marco's Pizza. Good to have you with us today. No matter how you may be getting to us, live on video, 10 a.m., DawgNation Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter feed, on the radio at noon, on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref, and in podcast form, wherever podcasts can be found, including the world-famous DawgNation.com. We're just glad you have found DawgNation Daily here today. And a huge thanks to Marco's Pizza for making it all possible. And what a great way to kick off the month of October here, with some great, authentic Italian quality pizza. Every store, every day, the Italian way. And with a regular, everyday low price of just $6.99 each for 2 medium, 2 topping pizzas, you know Marco's Pizza is a great choice. Take a break from cooking tonight. Settle in with your family. Sit around the TV. Watch some sports. And enjoy a little Marco's Pizza, and you'll be glad you did there on that front. As I mentioned a moment ago, we'll get Chip Towers here coming up in just a moment. Before we do that, let's get ready to go around the Dawghouse here on this Monday, presented by Pella Window and Door. And one of the things that I was really happy about when it comes to the aftermath of a day on Saturday in which Jake Fromm and Justin Fields both played a good bit. Obviously, the extra, what's the word I'm looking for, responsibility in terms of maintaining the right public image here probably rests with Fromm. Fromm is the incumbent starter. Some incumbent starters would be bothered by sharing time with a freshman backup. You saw how Kelly Bryant responded to that at Clemson when he was demoted, taken out of the starting lineup. He essentially bolted and transferred the very next day. You see, this is a touchy situation here. So there's a bit of an extra responsibility when it comes to the quarterback who's the starter in terms of saying the right things and doing all the right things. And I think even if you're on, even if you're a big fan of Justin Fields, I think you have to appreciate the way that Jake Fromm responded to the fact that it wasn't just his game on Saturday, and it wasn't just his team. He shared some of the quarterback responsibilities a bit with Justin Fields, but to listen to Fromm, that sounds plenty okay with him, because right now the offense is calling for a couple different guys to come in and both stay in a rhythm when they get into the game. Here is how Jake Fromm said it to reporters after the game.
The offense, that's just kind of the way our offense is. And, you call a play, you run it, and you go out and execute. I thought most of the time today the offense was executing, and then other times, we didn't quite execute. That's why we didn't put up as many points, maybe we wanted to today.
Jake, how would you answer, that somebody says there's something controversial about what's going on at quarterback here when you guys effectively ended up alternating a lot of times, coming out right in the middle of the drives, and sometimes you start and him finishing and vice versa?
Yeah. I mean, that's just the football kind of flow of the game. That's kind of up to Coach Smart, and you just go out, you get the play, and you go out and execute.
I think that's a classy answer from Fromm, who's a classy young man, and I think Georgia's in a situation right now where it does need to play both guys. That It's not getting everything it needs offensively right now from Jake Fromm, especially against some of the better opponents it'll see later on this season. And with Justin Fields, it may not be getting everything it needs from just him either. This is a tough choice for Kirby Smart and Jim Chaney. It's one they get paid the big bucks. And right now, how all this plays out in the future is going to be very, very interesting to watch out. But for now, it's Around the Dawghouse presented by Pella Window and Door. And, of course, Pella Windows and Door can help you equip your house with energy-efficient windows and doors. They're family-owned and operated, which is good news. That means you get a branch right here in Georgia. But they're also local service backed by a national company, which is good news as well. And right now, a great offer. How about this? You can currently get 50% off qualifying installations or 0% APR for 48 months. It's valid through November 8th, which means you want to act right now. Pella offers the best lifetime warranty with the top-of-the-line equipment and unparalleled expertise. You can schedule your free in-home consultation today, and Pella's a winning team will take care of everything, including the measurements. Here's how you do it. Very easy to do. Simply go to this website, PellaSoutheast.us. Let me say that one more time, more slowly. I have a tendency to talk a little fast here. Let me say that one more time, PellaSoutheast.us. That's the website. You can submit some times, and one of their professional experts will call you back. Or you can hit up the Dunwoody showroom at 404-445-2979. That number, once again, 404-445-2979. Pella Window and Door of Georgia. They are, of course, viewed to be the best. And it's good to have you with us here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Marco's Pizza, with more on everything going on with the Georgia quarterbacks and everything in the aftermath of a Georgia win against Tennessee. Let's talk to our buddy Chip Towers right now.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
All right, Chip Towers, great to have you with us. Fascinating content from you at DawgNation.com in the aftermath of the Georgia win against Tennessee. I want to do, obviously, a lot of Fromm and Fields with you, but if you don't mind, let me begin kind of on a more, I guess, global subject, and we'll kind of drill down on the quarterbacks over the course of the time. On your report card at DawgNation.com this week, after the game, posted yesterday to DawgNation.com, you gave the Georgia offense a B. I certainly couldn't give it a higher grade than that, even though, once again, Georgia scores kind of a lot of points, certainly averaging a lot of points thus far this season. But the Georgia offense, to me, is either a step slow or a degree off, whatever, I guess, tired analogy you want to use to compare it to. What do you make of the current state of the Georgia offense, and do you agree with me, whether it's quarterback sharing time or Swift getting the most carries, Holyfield getting the most carries, anything else, there's just something that's not quite fully clicking with this Georgia offense as of right now? Would you agree with that assessment, Chip?
I absolutely would agree with that assessment. And, you think about it, you're sitting here with a team that's ranked number 2 in the country, and it's, 5-0 on the year. And averaging, 43.2 points a game or whatever it is, you'd think they've gotten a few A's on that report card this year. I think they might have gotten one for me this year, but it's all about the standards, sort of. And, I don't do pluses and minuses on that report card. I have before, but I found it to be, we're in college, it's a 4-0, a 3-0, a 2-0. Let's just stick with A, B, C, or D. But it's a low B. And it's because of all the things that you said. It's the eye test. You get it to the end of the game and you look down and you go, wow, that's they completed, 65, 70% of their passes, and there weren't any interceptions. Georgia's doing a great job of protecting the football, though I'd say they got a little fortunate on Saturday. 4 fumbles, no turnovers. But overall, they're just not clicking like we all know that they can. They're just not executing like they can, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, we really have yet to have a fully healthy 100% offense put on the field by Georgia, and maybe we won't all year. That was one of the big things about last year's team, just the ability to stay healthy. But that said, it is sputtering and spitting a little bit and just not quite running like the smooth machine that, let's face it, we're seeing right over there to the west of us in Alabama every week.
You were skeptical of Kirby Smart's claim that there is no plan when it comes to the quarterbacks, and while certainly, Chip, I think that Kirby takes some liberties with his own descriptions from time to time, let me explain to you why I am maybe more willing to take him at his word on this than you might have been in some of the things that you wrote at DawgNation.com coming off of Saturday night. If Justin Fields did not play on Saturday, at least as much as he did against Tennessee versus Vanderbilt this upcoming Saturday, I think that would be kind of a unusual thing to expect. And yet, when you look at the following Saturday on the road at LSU, I'm not quite sure how much I want to see Fields in that game as a fan, because Death Valley is a far different kind of environment than Saturday against Vanderbilt is. So from that standpoint, I think there is still a wait and see about how much Justin Fields is the right amount of Justin Fields for a game like this. I don't think it's zero right now. I think Saturday proved that the Georgia offense got something when he came in the game. And yet making tough throws in tight windows against a much better defense like what LSU is going to show Georgia, is he really ready for that yet? So from that standpoint, it does make sense to say that we've got no plan. Maybe better said, we haven't fully allowed the plan to evolve yet. But from that standpoint, it does feel at least somewhat sensible to say that Kirby Smart doesn't quite yet know how all this is going to play out. How would you respond to that?
Well, I mean, I don't buy for a minute that there's not a plan about it. I find that really kind of laughable. But I know what he means. Okay, I mean, it's you're going into the game, and the plan is in every game to get Justin Fields into the game. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that, and there's multiple reasons for it. Starting with, you only have two quarterbacks, so you better have two guys ready to go always. I mean, just like we saw with Clemson the other day, with Trevor Lawrence getting knocked out, you got to have that second guy ready to go. And the only way a second guy is going to be ready to go is if he's in there in meaningful live snaps in games that matter, right? So that's part of it. The other part of it is I think we're seeing increasingly, and now it's been exacerbated a little bit with the loss of Ben Cleveland out of lineup. Georgia's pass protection is a deficiency on this team. I don't think there's any question about it. Some of it might have to do with Andrew Thomas's ankle being a little gimpy right now. It may have to do with Ben Cleveland being out with a broken leg right now, or it may be just that this team is not as good at protecting the passer as some others have. But what's an answer to a quarterback that's going to get a lot of pressure? Well, the one maybe chink in Jake Fromm's quarterback armor is he's just not the most mobile guy in the world. He can move fine, but he's just not all that shifty, and he does what Jim Chaney wants him to do. He keeps his eyes downfield, looking for somewhere to deliver the football. But Justin Fields represents a change of pace for that. So that's the plan. The plan is to get Justin Fields in as often as you can, and if you don't, if that pass protection is not at an optimum level, then you want to dispatch the young man and put him in there and take some pressure off and make them back, back off on the pressure a little bit. He's able to do that. But, just that there's no plan. I mean, it's fine. It's a cute phrase, and Kirby can look down there and repeat it, and then that becomes a thing. But, this guy plans as much as any coaches I've ever seen, and him and Jim Chaney talk extensively every week about how are we going to deploy the quarterbacks this week. And so, there's a plan, but it may be, it may not be defined as 4th series, 6th series, that kind of thing. Kind of by feel, it looks like.
So let me push back on that a little bit, not to disagree with you, but just sort of take the conversation in a different place. Saturday, and I'm speaking, of course, here as a fan, was a different kind of day for me because I felt like Saturday we saw some evidence that this is more than just making sure a backup quarterback is ready to play, making sure he's got enough experience that he could carry the load if needed to. I saw an example of the fact that Georgia may need Justin Fields to win some games this year. And not because that Jake Fromm's a deficient quarterback, because I don't believe that he is, but because right now, Chip, I believe that, and I said this before you joined us, I think that Justin Fields is Georgia's best running back right now. And I think that Georgia on first down is not running the ball as well as we've come to expect Georgia to run the ball. You talk about the issues with the pass protection. I think you can say the same thing about really, mauling people at the point of attack for opening holes for the running game right now. And Fields, with his legs, is right now just more dynamic than Holyfield, than Swift is for whatever reason. And Brian Harrigan, even though he came in and gave Georgia a nice spark, I guess I'd probably still take, Fields with the ball in his hand over Harrigan right now. I think that Fields can throw it too, but right now his most valuable attribute for Georgia is his ability to run the football, and I don't think that Georgia can beat an LSU on the road or an Auburn in November if they don't get some of that running stuff that Fields provides. And so from Saturday's standpoint, that was almost like a sort of a new revelation here that this is Fields being more than just a backup quarterback. How would you respond to that?
Well, I mean, I would agree with that 100%, and that's kind of what I've said the whole time. I mean, going back to the preseason and really back into the spring, when everybody nationally was trying to make this into a quarterback controversy. This is not a quarterback controversy right now. Jake Fromm is going to be your starting quarterback, and is going to be Georgia's quarterback going into the season. But I said, all bets are off once you get into the season, and that's the bottom line is performance. This is a performance-based business, and how is your offense performing, and how is it doing it? I agree with that 100%. Everything you said. I mean, think about Georgia. Georgia's offense is based very heavily in the zone read. Well, how much more of a threat is the zone read with Justin Fields in there than Jake Fromm? I mean, exponentially more, right? I mean, he can keep that ball, and I don't disagree with you really either. He might be their best running back, overall. I mean, shoot, I wouldn't mind seeing a scenario where he did line up in the running back position. Maybe they'll shift them out there where they have them both in the wild dog sometime. That would be terrific. But Jim Chaney made it clear at the preseason they got to be very careful about also keeping Justin Fields healthy. So you're not all of a sudden going to turn into a quarterback run based team. I still think Georgia's seeking to be balanced. But you're right. As long as you're having deficiencies in the run game and deficiency in pass protection, you're going to need more and more to rely on a guy like Justin Fields. But he's not ready to compete, in my opinion, with Jake Fromm just yet when it comes to defensive recognition, defensive reads, checking in and out of place. All of that is part and parcel of what Georgia does. And you have to reiterate here, Jake Fromm is still performing at an extremely high level in that regard. I mean, you can't underestimate that. Yeah, there's some missed passes and a couple of things here and there, but still, Georgia's operating at a pretty high efficiency rate when it comes to being in the right play and running the right thing against the right defense.
We've got more with Chip Towers coming up. We'll talk about everything that happened beyond the quarterbacks in Georgia, Tennessee. Before that, let me remind you, Kroger's got a great new program. It's called Ship. You can stock up and save on thousands of items shipped right to you. You can shop now and get up to 15% off plus free shipping on your first order. So check that out. Good to have Kroger as a part of a DawgNation Daily here today as well. Let me mention the Isaac Nauta weird touchdown in the first quarter. You kind of gave Nauta your game ball for that. I understand your decision to do so. First of all, it was a thrilling play, if not a little bit weird. We'll hear more from Nauta on exactly what happened there a little bit later on in our program here today. And Chip, I don't mean to pick at a scab that many Georgia fans kind of have in their mind here, but even if Nauta had the poor protection to lead to him to have the football in his hand, man, when he scooped that thing up and ran in the open field, made a tackler, at least one tackler miss, he really runs well for a tight end. And I know that just seeing him, running the way that he did with that football in his hand, I'm sure reminds some Georgia fans of why they wish Georgia threw to the tight ends more than they do. I don't know if you had a similar thought, but that was the thought that I had watching Nauta go streaking down that sideline.
Well, Isaac joked about it, but he said maybe they need to give me the ball a little bit more out of the backfield. And I wouldn't disagree with that completely. And in fact, there's got to be something in Jim Chaney's playbook where, a lot of times the tight end lines up in that H-back sort of position out there. And I'd love to see him go around the corner on one of those little jet sweeps one time and take on a linebacker or cornerback one-on-one because he's got some moves and obviously he has great size. And that was sort of just having a little bit of fun with the game ball. Sure. As Isaac rightly admitted to afterward, he's going to get a minus on that play. Every single player, all 11 on the field, every play gets graded by the coaches on Sundays, and they come in there and it's very simple. You get a plus or a minus. He's going to get a minus on that play because his job on that play was pass protect. And Georgia's tight ends pass protect a lot. I mean, that's something, and I hear fans all the time complain about Charlie Warner on pass protect and Isaac Nauta on pass protect, but for Georgia football generally, and Alabama football under Nick Saban, it's a numbers game. You want to get it down to where you're at least one-on-one, and you feel like you can win one-on-one on everybody. So you don't want to be outnumbered, and that's why the tight ends end up getting involved in the pass game and pass protection a good bit. But so funny, Isaac Nauta says, I thought he looked like he was shot out of a cannon there. He said he felt like he was pulling a trailer. He was so tired, but and he didn't think he would ever get to the end. And also, not to be lost on this particular play, Jeremiah Holloman, great block, really sprung that thing and gave him a clear passage to the end zone. It ended up being a very pivotal play because if it goes the other direction, they recover the ball there. You may end up with a different ball game. Certainly in that first quarter, you did.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Chip. There's also another side of the ball, just other than offense here. Defensively,
Yes,
defensively, I know there were a couple breakdowns there late, but overall, I think one of the more optimistic assessments coming out of this game was I thought it was a much better defensive performance for Georgia against Tennessee than it was against Missouri. Now, they're two very different teams, but the stuff that Georgia did poorly against Missouri, line of scrimmage stuff, stopping the run, I thought that looked much better against Tennessee on Saturday, which is, I think, probably a hopeful note for the Georgia defense. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this might have been, even though they gave up two explosive plays that they are defined by being 15 yards or more, those kind of came late. I mean, there's no excuse for them, and those kind of things drive Kirby bananas. And so they were real, and they happened and all that. But I also thought that they probably played their best game overall, with the exception of those couple of plays, and especially, look, the reason I didn't think Georgia was going to cover in this game anyway is because in Tennessee and Georgia, it's just like in Georgia and Alabama, you have two teams that are mirror images of each other and trying to accomplish the same things. They know what you're going to do, you know what they're going to do, and it's just not going to be. It's just not going to be. You're not going to be able to outflank one way or another, whether it be strategically or, literally. And so I thought that was going to be a problem. And so with that in mind, I thought Georgia straight up played much better. Now, there's also the Missouri thing. I mean, I really believe that a lot of those bad numbers, particularly against first down rush, just had to do with strategic emphasis. Georgia was very, very focused in that game on not letting Drew Lock beat him deep. And you know what? They didn't. Manuel Hall, zip, no long passes, no passes over 10 or 12 yards, I think it was, in that game. So they accomplished what they need to, and that's going to change from week to week. I mean, I think this week with Vanderbilt coming in here, I think we'll see a little bit more of that, Missouri game plan come out. Kyle Shermer throws that ball around a lot. They have a wide receiver by the name of Elijah Lipscomb, who actually leads the SEC right now with 480 yards and 6 touchdowns. They can throw the ball around a little bit. They run the ball decently. Keyshawn Vaughn's a good running back. But, I do think that that's going to change from week to week. And so you'll be a little bit more focused on keeping the pass game underneath you in this game. But, fast forward to next week, the week after that, the big LSU game, the DawgNation invasion, Baton Rouge, that's going to be, the focus is going to shift the other way again. So it's Georgia's doing a good job, I think, of game planning for whoever their opponent is and really, achieving their objective. And that's what we saw both against Tennessee and Missouri.
Chip, great stuff. We appreciate your time. I know it'll be a very interesting Kirby Smart press conference later on today, and I know you'll have a lot of things to write about that at DawgNation.com. And then as we head towards Vanderbilt, and as you said, DawgNation invasion in Baton Rouge the following week, it's going to be a busy time here around DawgNation. Thanks for helping us stay up to date on everything. We'll look forward to speaking to you soon.
See you, man.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Good stuff there from Chip Towers. Always appreciate his time here on DawgNation Daily. We appreciate you being here with us as well. And, as we start our SEC Through, one of the things you've become very used to hearing me talk about, my friends at MyBookie. Many of you, you haven't really done the MyBookie thing yet, and I totally get why. It may be a new experience for you. You want to know what it's all about. You hear me pick games and pick winners. At least sometimes I pick winners. But that's not the only thing, just the straight-up football bets. That's not the only thing that MyBookie provides. They have a lot of other really fun stuff as well. If you've ever been to a casino before where you play roulette, you can kind of put action on a couple different numbers on any one roll. The same thing kind of works with MyBookie when it comes to parlay. You can pick 3 games. It's a way of taking a little bit of action and turning it into a very big winning. You put down $100 down and end up winning $600 just by picking 3 winners as a part of the same parlay there. So parlays are a fun way to kind of get in action on the football. And it goes beyond football as well. You may not realize this, but Conor McGregor is fighting in the octagon here again this weekend. I guess it's his first fight in a couple of years there in that octagon format where you can bet on him to win. You can bet on him to get knocked out. There's a whole range of bets you can make there when it comes to McGregor and the MMA fight coming up this Saturday night. So That's kind of a really cool thing to get in. Playoff baseball, everything, it's all going to be going down there at MyBookie. And the really cool thing here as well is you can become a winner before you even kind of get your action down, because MyBookie right now has a great offer for DawgNation Daily listeners and viewers. Your first deposit can be matched dollar for dollar. That means as soon as you put money in your account, they put money in your account to match that. You're essentially already a winner before you place your first bet. But you got to do this fast. I've been told they're going to cut this offer off at some point here. So get in and take advantage of that offer while it's there. You may be wondering, well, how do I do that then, BA? Find MyBookie online. It's MyBookie. Find MyBookie online and use the promo code DawgNation. All one word, spelled the way it's supposed to be, DAWG. Then after that, you play, you win, you get paid, and your first deposit can be matched dollar for dollar, but you got to use the promo code DawgNation. So find MyBookie online, use the promo code DawgNation, and you will be in to win. As far as my picks for the weekend, some did well, some maybe not so well. I want to recap some of the SEC games from the weekend here right now. We'll kind of look at my thoughts on those. First of all, Texas A&M closed with Arkansas. We called this around here just for the simple fact that Arkansas was not as bad as it looked the week before against Auburn. That actually defensively had done a pretty good job on the Tigers there. They just had a terrible time with special teams, and that's the kind of thing that kind of comes back to earth. Here, it's also the classic letdown game for Texas A&M, who thinks it's beyond the really tough stretch of its schedule with Clemson and Alabama behind it, then playing what's supposed to be an easier game against Arkansas. That's a classic letdown situation. We're not surprised around here, and that game was closer than it looked. Did you see this, though? This is a neutral site game at Jerry World. Only about 50-something thousand on hand here for a game that still has pretty long contract left. It is really funny. Georgia-Florida in Jacksonville is one of the few outliers here where, as a neutral site venue, that still seems like a big deal. Auburn and Washington, you could have had tickets to that very easily at the beginning of the season at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium for the Chick-fil-A kickoff. These neutral site games to be hot tickets. They are not as much anymore. People like big games on campus. The fact that nobody came to Arkansas, Texas A&M on Saturday, another piece of proof of that. Speaking of Auburn, in general, I'm still relatively high on Auburn. I think they're a very dangerous opponent for everybody in the SEC. But they are not humming along right now. Another MyBookie best bet that we got right from Saturday was Auburn close against Southern Miss. Only 24-13 the final here. This is an Auburn team that just simply cannot get things going offensively. And, listen, at a certain point you got to ask the question of, we move past the tug-of-war between Chip Lindsey and Gus Malzahn and wonder, what is Gus Malzahn doing that it's slow starts for Auburn each and every year, slow starts here from an offensive standpoint. Now, by the time November rolls around, even though both games are on the road, I still think Auburn is dangerous at Georgia. I think Auburn is still dangerous even at Alabama and the Iron Bowl there at the end of the season. But why is it such a slow start for Auburn offensively? To me, that seems like a fair question to ask here at this moment. By the way, let me stay in the SEC West. A MyBookie best bet that we got wrong. We're going to need to call ourselves out for this. Florida, better than I would have given them credit for against Mississippi State on Saturday. They win that game 13-6. A bad game offensively. Nick Fitzgerald has gotten no better in terms of his ability to throw the ball deep down the field. That's an issue for the Bulldogs, who've now lost 2 straight and are just complete, total frauds. I mean, this was the easiest thing in the world to pick at the beginning of the season. Even though I thought they'd be Florida on Saturday, the idea that first-year coach Joe Moorhead was going to step in and be a real threat in the SEC West, there is no precedent to support that whatsoever. It is not a surprise that they're already kind of knocked out of the SEC West here. It is probably a surprise, though, that they lost to Florida, who all of a sudden now does it in a slightly different way. What you think about the cocktail party coming up in 26 days, you think about the idea that all of a sudden Florida kind of shows some toughness along its lines of scrimmage here to win a low-scoring game on the road. I don't like Florida, but I got to give them credit for that. I was wrong on Kentucky and South Carolina. Kentucky's now won 3 straight really big games and looks to be potentially a top 10 team when it hosts Georgia in November here. All of a sudden, that feels like a very big game. Credit to the Wildcats and Benny Snell right now, who look really good. And then LSU 45-16 over Ole Miss. Another one of those games where I expected the underdog to keep that one a little closer. LSU's humming here, and that's going to be another. I wrote about this at DawgNation.com last week. The Georgia schedule at one point in time seemed like a pushover, seemed very easy. Georgia's going to play now potentially 2 top 10 teams on the road here in a matter of, about 4 weeks. Obviously, LSU is going to be one of those teams. I think Kentucky still has a chance to be one of those teams. Florida, I'm assuming, is going to be ranked when Georgia plays them, at least based on the last 2 wins here. Now, we'll see how things change beyond that, but they've, I guess, got LSU coming up this Saturday, so that makes things a little tougher there. But all of a sudden, this Georgia schedule is starting to look a little bit tougher. Maybe, though, the toughness of the Georgia schedule begins not this Saturday, but the Saturday after that, because for the second consecutive week, really almost third consecutive week if you count Missouri not covering against Purdue, the Georgia opponent the week before it plays Georgia looks pretty bad here. Vanderbilt does win against Tennessee State, but Tennessee State's an FCS program. 31-27, the final there. You know, it's another situation for Georgia where every single game, with the exception probably of South Carolina this year, every single game that Georgia has played, it's one of those things where just the win itself is not enough. You have to extrapolate how that performance would have looked against a better team, and on Saturday against Vanderbilt, it's going to be the same kind of story there. So Vanderbilt squeaks by Tennessee State, maybe looking ahead to Georgia, I guess, or maybe Vanderbilt's just not very good. Either way, we'll make that your SEC through. And here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Marco's Pizza, it's time to do what we do every single Monday. You know, we had some fun with Chip Towers earlier, who had some fun with tight end Isaac Nauta, who Nauta got Chip's game ball at DawgNation.com. We want to kind of keep that theme going. We want to make our Isaac Nauta our cool under pressure performer of the week, brought to you by our friends at R.S. Andrews, who are going to be with us for the DawgNation Invasion coming up in a couple weeks. Can't wait to see Dari and those guys for DawgNation Invasion in Baton Rouge. And, of course, we love R.S. Andrews as well because they provide the cool under pressure performer of the week. And this week it is Georgia tight end Isaac Nauta. It was a weird play. As Chip said, he may get a minus grade for it because he didn't do a particularly good job of pass protection. But when the ball bounced up, he scooped it up. And, man, he looked like a very impressive five-star athlete running there with the ball in his hand. Makes you almost wish that Georgia would maybe throw the ball to him a little bit more here. I also wrote about that last week at DawgNation.com too. But credit to Nauta. On the heels of his R.S. Andrews cool under pressure performance of the week, he didn't try to take too much credit for it. He was readily open and honest, but the fact that the only reason why he was in the position to scoop up the ball the way he was is because he had missed the pass protection assignment that he had been given. So honesty on the heels of great athleticism. Here is Nauta in his own words describing one of the strangest touchdowns I've seen scored in Sanford Stadium.
Defensive end, man, he was rushing real far field, and I was trying to run him by. I was hoping Jake was going to step up. He reached out, grabbed the ball, and next thing you know, ball pops up, caught it, and I just took off with it. But yeah, busted me in protection, so yeah, I definitely got to clean that up for next week, man. But like I said, I'm just glad something positive came out of it, and it didn't result in a turnover.
Well, first of all, you, as I said, you appreciate the honesty from Nauta, who says, man, we got to get that cleaned up. We've seen a couple of those with tight ends here as of late. Werner against Missouri comes to mind here. We're in a max protect situation. Georgia just not quite getting the pass coverage down. But the time, though, Georgia needed that touchdown. Georgia needed to get on the board there after not scoring the first half against Missouri. As Chip talked about, this is not an offense necessarily clicking on all cylinders, so it's kind of nice to see, even if it was a broken play, Nauta making a big play and have the opportunity. And for that, he's our R.S. Andrews cool under pressure performer of the week. And speaking of R.S. Andrews, the guys that always get the great seats to the game, the VIP access, they beat the crowd, they get all the great seats. Well, listen, you may not ever get that in real life, but R.S. Andrews can make you feel that way when you take advantage of their great offer right now, because right now $99 gets you the coverage you need for your furnace to keep you safe. Inspecting your heat exchanger for leaks, checking filters, your flue and vents. R.S. Andrews gets your system to factory fresh specs for just $99. You can get that great seats feeling, the VIP feeling. You can get that from R.S. Andrews when you get a fall furnace checkup from the ones we trust. R.S. Andrews. You can find them online at rsandrews.com. Here's why you want to trust R.S. Andrews, by the way. A flue, I don't even know what that is. If you said go to your house right now and pointed the flue on your furnace, I would not be able to find that. So you don't want me doing your $99 furnace tune-up, but you do want the experts at R.S. Andrews. That's why you want them at rsandrews.com. And, of course, it's great to have them with us on our DawgNation Daily here as well. And I did mention this, by the way. Dari and our friends from R.S. Andrews is going to be with us for DawgNation Invasion coming up in a couple of weeks. We are kind of turning the corner towards the big moment against LSU 2 Saturdays from now. We're going to be talking a lot about that here over the course of the next couple of weeks on a DawgNation Daily presented by Marco's Pizza. Before that, though, we got to take care of some business. We do it every day at this time. We believe that Georgia fans are supposed to be Gator haters. And listen, even though we're Gator haters, doesn't mean we can't give credit where credit's due. Florida winning these two games, both on the road, at Tennessee, which is no great accomplishment, Mississippi State, which is not the kind of thing they give you a trophy for, but nonetheless, a ranked team at home that desperately needed that game. I guess you got to give Florida a little bit of credit here. So if we do have a smattering of Florida fans that listen to the show from time to time, you wanted me to give your team some credit at some point, here it is. Florida's had a couple good wins. And you know what? The game in Jacksonville starts to seem a little more interesting here. We still think Georgia wins 26 days from now. We'll see you tomorrow right here on DawgNation Daily. and on video. I can only imagine it'll be a spirited conversation today with anything that you want to discuss about the show. So we'll kind of dive in and take a lot of these comments here, and certainly appreciate you being with us. Let me pull some of these up here. I had a little issue with my comments earlier. I also have enough battery now that I can move my laptop back to its customary side. It's kind of funny. I don't know if I'm just much more of a creature of habit than everybody else is, or if everyone's as bad a creature of habit as I am. But just the whole thing of like the laptop being on this side as opposed to this side completely rocks my world. I can't even function when it's like that. I had to plug it in over here to charge it for a little bit here. So I don't know if that's just me or if that's everybody, but that's certainly something I dealt with. All right, let me hit some Facebook comments and I'll go to YouTube here in a moment. Justin Stiles says, I was there as my first college game. It was awesome. Well, Justin, I'm glad you enjoyed that. Yeah, I thought the atmosphere was great at the beginning of the game, and I'd been looking so much forward to that. It was kind of funny. I got into campus pretty early on Saturday morning, and, the way I come to Athens is I come up 85 and get on there at the old Athens Highway, which you call like 129, which goes through Jefferson Arcade. And, yes, I've gotten, just like all of y'all, I've gotten a speeding ticket in Arcade before. So, I've kind of done all those rites of passage. But that's the way I kind of grew up. I lived in Gainesville growing up, and that's the way we went to Athens. And so I still either through I don't like Highway 316, first of all. Second of all, it just sort of feels like Athens to me to kind of go through Pendergrass to kind of get there. And, even on that road, backed up early on Saturday, you already saw some traffic. You already kind of felt that vibe of once you got on campus, there was, tailgate real estate already occupied and everybody having a great time, a thicker, more jovial crowd than you'd seen for either of the first two home games. So if that was your first experience, I think you had yourself a pretty good time there. Mike Mazzell says, BA, our offense cannot play that way against LSU. And I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. The Georgia offense is leaving something out there right now. It's the number that I point out here in particular more so than anything else. If you look at the overall numbers for Georgia, it's almost hard to find where the deficiency truly is. Because the points, 38, you don't really apologize for that. The passing numbers for Fromm, 73% on 8.4 yards per attempt. 8.4 is not going to lead the SEC, but it's not the kind of thing you typically bench a quarterback for either. That doesn't look too bad. The overall success rate for running backs, which is a stat that I pay close attention to. It's all about number of yards gained compared to the yards necessary to get a first down or a touchdown. The overall success rate for the running backs was 49%. That's well above the national average. For that particular game, it's even higher than Georgia was for the season in 2017. So what is the issue for the Georgia offense? I mean, the best I can tell is if you want to really drill down to the minutia here, the granular level, which is probably a bigger word than I should be using, Georgia cannot run the ball on first down right now. And as long as that's the case, it's just going to be hard to score. Drives are eventually going to stall, and touchdowns are going to turn to field goals, and field goals are going to turn into punts if you are not making it easier on second and third down. A successful first down running plays 5 yards at least. And Georgia only had successful first down running plays 32% of the time on Saturday. Average is right around 38, 39% for the year coming in to Saturday, and just 32% on Saturday. That's the one area. And, listen, last night I looked like the biggest dork in the world. I had, the TV going, looking at the replay. I, print out the play-by-play chart data. And I'm just going play-by-play, and trying to find where it was that Georgia's kind of falling apart here. And that's the place that I just see the deficiency right now. And it's not just one guy more than another, although, you can make a case that if you look a little closer, you might see, some evidence of that. But overall, Georgia is not running the ball well enough on first down. So you're not getting enough second and fives, which don't lead to enough third and ones. Play calling is a lot easier on third and one. It just is. And play calling is a lot easier on second 5. A second 8, a third and 7, that's not as easy of a play call here. And, Georgia has built itself around a certain kind of thing. And right now, the Georgia offense is not quite doing that. Kai Hagan bringing up a really good point. I should have mentioned this during the regular show. How about Nick Chubb yesterday? I saw his second touchdown. I didn't see his first. I know Sonny Michel also got a touchdown yesterday as well. I only saw that one via replay. But I was actually watching the Browns and Raiders when Chubb got his second touchdown. And, that was so much fun to see. So much fun to see. It reminds you of all those great runs that Chubb had in a Georgia uniform. What a cool thing that is. Baker Mayfield's one of my least favorite athletes of all time. I mean, of all time. But even me, I almost have a little bit of a soft spot in my heart for Mayfield once he's putting the ball in Chubb's stomach there. So, yeah, so that's actually turning into a pretty cool combination. Scott Harris says, BA, our average victory this year is about 1 touchdown better this year than through 5 games a year ago. Maybe we're being too critical of our team. I understand where you're coming from, and there's certainly probably plenty of examples of how Georgia fans have become too critical. I don't deny that. But you're missing 2 obvious points when it comes to comparing this year's scores to last year's score. Georgia played at Notre Dame a year ago. That's a tough game. That's a tough opponent. And yes, it blew out Mississippi State. That's also a relatively tough opponent there as well. And that was a very impressive showing for Georgia back in 2017. So the first 5 games this year, I would argue, are not quite created the same as the first 5 games from a year ago, especially Notre Dame. And I think this is the point that I tried to make a moment ago. I just didn't quite have time to get to. What Georgia really needs right now is a game in which just winning is enough. If Georgia beats LSU, when we come on the air in Baton Rouge for our Northside Hospital postgame show, there will be no, well, if you play this way against Auburn, you're going to get beat. There will be none of that kind of conversation. A win against LSU is the kind of thing for which you have to offer no apologies and for which you have to offer no explanations. If you win that game, you have done your job. Georgia through 5 games hasn't played any of those games yet. Even 24th ranked South Carolina at the time that Georgia played it. Even that was the kind of thing of, well, this is okay, but are you sure this is a national championship caliber and blah, 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 blah. Georgia just has not played the kind of game where a win itself was enough to validate something. And in the absence of that, the only thing you're left to do is say, well, did Georgia look as good in this game as Alabama did when it beat Ole Miss 62-7? That's about the only game you can play in your mind of how much is this win really worth. It's all about the racehorse or a horse race. I'm telling y'all, sometimes I don't know where I'm coming from with some of the things I say. It's all about the horse race with Alabama for style points. And that is maddening. It is frustrating. It's one of those reasons why I just wish Georgia played a tougher schedule. And even if it meant more losses over the long haul, at least the games themselves would be more consequential. When all you can do about a game is extrapolate how it would mean, how that performance would sort of compare in another game against a different opponent, there's an element of that that's always going to be unsatisfying. David West says offensive points better than Bobo's. I think that's a reference to 2014, Bobo's last year at Georgia. And I guess I did see something about that on the internet as well. I forgot who posted that or where I saw that. But that Georgia right now averaging more points than it did in Bobo's final year of 2014, which is a good thing. But y'all are watching the games. I mean, I can play all kinds of games with stats, and we can make the stats, if you really highlight the right stat, we can make it say whatever you want to say. When you look at the Georgia offense right now, is it what you think it needs to be? Are you satisfied with what you're saying? And there is a certain point when the whole notion of, gosh, can you believe Georgia fans now they complain about 38 points, or gosh, can you believe Georgia blows out Tennessee? I can remember back when Tennessee was beating Georgia every year in the 90s. To think we would ever be in a situation where we can beat them 38-12, all that kind of stuff. At a certain point, I'm just sort of over all of that. And even if the idea of a standard that Georgia's trying to play to, even if that has been overused to the point now it has become like the worst cliche in the world, it didn't start off being that way. It started off meaning something, and I do think from Georgia's standpoint that it is national championship or bust. Like every year from now on, it is at least college football playoff or bust, and anything that's sort of below that playoff standard is just not going to quite be good enough. Because, by the way, the playoff standard around college football right now is incredibly high. Did you see some of the stuff that happened over the course of the weekend? We said on Friday that a couple of those national games could have impact certainly on the SEC and on Georgia as well. That atmosphere in State College for that whiteout was incredible. 100-something thousand fans, whatever, all dressed in white, all making a bunch of noise. And Ohio State goes on the road and gets that win. That is an incredible performance by Ohio State. And y'all, I don't like or admire more than y'all do. I don't like. I promise you, I like Urban Meyer as you know. I dislike him just as much as any of y'all do. But you got to give credit where credit's due. Ohio State right now is on the very short list of a playoff team. You can make a case, and I saw somebody, I think it was Joy Galloway or somebody, make this case on ESPN on Saturday night that Ohio State, may have already punched its ticket for the playoff, because when you win that tough game on the road, everything else just may be, taken care of for you. Clemson, even with Trevor Lawrence's injury, they find a way to win. That's a tough team that's been in the playoff 3 years in a row. See Notre Dame just wallop Stanford. Now I know Bryce Love leads that game with injury, but still, we said that the winner of that Stanford-Notre Dame game was going to be one of those teams that really kind of elbowed their way in significantly in the college football playoff conversation. They've done that. Oklahoma, not great for a third consecutive week. Maybe they take a back seat here, but this is one of those things where not only are you trying to make the playoff, but you realize that because of how there's just such a vast gap between the 4 or 5 really best teams and kind of everybody else, that the standard for making the playoff is higher than it was in 2014 when this thing first began. I mean, 2014 when this thing first began, Mississippi State was number 1 for consecutive weeks, a series of weeks. Mississippi State could not be number 1 in 2018. And any team of that caliber, there's no room for an Oklahoma State to be number 1 anymore. There's no room for some plucky underdog to take college football by storm. This has become, for only the biggest and the best, the Amazon.coms, the Walmarts of college football. That's the only schools that are truly competing for the college football playoff right now, which means the standard that Georgia's trying to achieve is very high here. Junior Baker says that the playoff were today, Georgia would be left out. It'd be Bama, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Clemson. I mean, I think Notre Dame's presence here is tough for Georgia right now, which is one of the reasons why we've been paying attention to the playoff debate, even though we're still several weeks away from the first playoff committee announcement here. We're paying close attention to that because, I heard Colin Cowherd on Friday. I may play this at a certain point in time of I may play this audio at a certain point in time on the show here. But he talked about his distaste for college football now that the sport's become so regional, that the absence of more Midwest and Western teams make college football a more distasteful sport. I think that the second SEC team is swimming against that stream. There was no Midwest team in the playoff a year ago. That means that if they can find a way to get both Notre Dame and Ohio State in this year to kind of correct that, obviously the committee would want to do that. They're driven by economics like anybody else is. Human beings respond to incentives. There's an incentive to leave out 3 Deep South teams. Georgia's got to really prove its worth here to be included. Uncle D on YouTube says Notre Dame has to get knocked out of the playoffs. I think they have an automatic pass to the playoff unless they lose. Yeah, and look at that schedule the rest of the way. Getting by Stanford, especially in convincing fashion, looks like they found a quarterback in Ian Book. Getting that done the way they did, that sets them up for a long run. It's USC at the end of the season. No matter the record for the Trojans, that's still a tough opponent. But Notre Dame may be going on a bit of a run here. You're going to hear, it's my prediction now, you're going to hear a lot more about Notre Dame than you want to, at least most of you. K9 Blues says, BA, thank you for your commentary and breakdown of Fromm and Fields and what both bring to the table and the value of both. We don't need a quarterback controversy. K9, I appreciate you saying that, and I'm glad that you see things the way that I do. I do think that Fromm and Fields both have value, and potentially they could both do some of what the other guy does. When I say Justin Fields is Georgia's best running back, that doesn't mean that I say that's all he's capable of doing. I don't believe that. I think that Fields is at least the best I can tell. I mean, he was 14 of 17 coming in on Saturday. He was 1 of 2 on Saturday. That means he's 15 of 19 on the year. That's pretty good numbers for Fields throwing the football. He can throw the football too, but right now, his real value to Georgia is giving them that dangerous running threat that the tailbacks aren't quite providing right now. And Jake Fromm, the overall numbers are still, pretty high on him, and he's got the track record of what he accomplished last season. I think that Georgia's worse off without either one of these two guys because of injury or just simply saying, we're going to put this guy on the bench and not play him. Right now, I think you need what Fromm and Fields both provide. And K9, I appreciate you weighing in on that. Green Soldier weighing in as well, and I appreciate that. Thank you for the kind words, Green. Anson McMahon says, BA, can our propensity to constantly rotate 4 and 5 running backs actually be a weakness at times, keeping guys from getting into a comfortable rhythm? So, Anson, I think different people might believe different things. I don't really believe in the idea of a rhythm. I don't believe in like streaky shooters or, hot hand. I don't really subscribe to that theory necessarily. I think what would help Georgia is, we said this on Saturday, and I talked to a lot of guys about this off the air as well. Jeff Santel, Cameron Nyes, like Connor Riley was hanging out with us. Georgia is still waiting for its Ben Cleveland moment. We think of the Georgia offensive line far differently at the end of 2017 than at times we thought about it during the season. We kind of look back on the totality of the year and say, wow, the Georgia offensive line became great in 2017. But it really was at its best once Ben Cleveland earned that starting spot. He was a redshirt freshman. And it's kind of weird to think that it almost seems like we waited a long time on seeing Cleveland become a starter, but he was a starter by, the 3-quarter mark of his redshirt freshman season. That's not by historic college football standards. That's not a very long time to wait to become a starter. But it seems like we waited forever on Cleveland to be worth the hype. And then when he did become worth the hype, his presence in the starting lineup for Georgia changed everything about the other 4 guys. And I do believe that offensive line, even though I'm not a former offensive lineman, I think I'm right about this. I really do. I think the offensive line is a chemistry position group. I don't think it's 5 individuals going out there and playing individual football. I think it's a group of 5 working together in tandem. It's almost a choreographed dance, which is probably the exact opposite of what it is. But you understand what I'm saying. These guys are forced to work together. Cleveland being in the offensive line made Lamont Gilliard better, and it made Andrew Thomas better as a right tackle, and the reverberations could probably be felt on the left side as well. I think that his presence changed everything. I think there may be something like that coming for this offensive line as well. 5 guys that, for the most part, are doing okay, I guess, but they're not mauling people. And at a certain point in time, we may see a new starter emerge, and that new starter may change the tone for the rest of the offensive line. That competition, I believe, is still ongoing. The best may be yet to come for that group. Bo Kaifa says, and I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Bo. Apologize if I didn't. Young players, conference games, room to improve expected. I like to see improvement with Fromm hanging on to the ball in the pocket. Let's peak later on. Yeah, Bo, I know, I almost hesitate to say this because I know it just sounds like, it sounds like propaganda. But I really do believe this. You could, polygraph tests are all the rage right now. You could put a polygraph test on me, and I promise I could pass this test. If you gave me the choice of being the team that's beating everybody 100-0, just waiting for the national championship game to get here, or being the team that's working towards getting good enough to win the championship, I really would rather be the team striving towards something as opposed to the team trying to maintain the standard that it is. I just think that history is not kind to teams who are too good too early, which is not to say that you sandbag and hold off on being as good as you can be, but there's something to be said for the focus and energy necessary to become good over the course of a season. If Georgia played Alabama today, if Alabama ambushed Georgia on the practice field, the results for Georgia would probably not be kind. I do not believe that Georgia would be likely to beat Alabama if they played today. Or if Vanderbilt called in sick and Georgia invited Alabama to come to Sanford Stadium on Saturday, the odds are Alabama would beat Georgia right now. Here's the great news. That game is not currently scheduled. If it does happen, it won't happen until December. There is a long time between now and December. And, Fields and Fromm seem to be able to coexist in a way that Tua and Hurts were not going to be able to, at least initially. Maybe that's getting a little bit better now that Hurts has decided not to redshirt, that Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence clearly were not going to be able to coexist in that way. Maybe there is some sort of, relationship where Fromm and Fields can kind of share both the time and the glory that comes with being the Georgia quarterback. And we've got all of that October where we're going to learn a lot about Georgia. All of November, we're going to also learn a lot about Georgia, including a Florida game that may be a little tougher than I initially gave it credit for, and certainly a Kentucky game that's completely blindsided me in terms of being an actual really stiff road test, which is what Georgia needs. Georgia needs more games like that because it's all about learning and growing and getting ready for what could be a stretch of 3 games. I mean, for Georgia to win a national championship, it's going to be Alabama in December, Clemson or Ohio State. Those are the kinds of teams that Georgia's going to be beating, or at least needing to beat to win a national championship. And the great news is it's got plenty of time to get ready for that. And also, the learning experiences that Georgia's going to have, it's going to have those without truly being in any kind of real threat to lose a game because the talent advantage still wins out. I mean, Tennessee was obviously playing on Saturday for the most part, try to keep the game close. And even doing that, there's only so close you can keep the game. Georgia's got a cushion and an advantage over virtually everybody it plays. What it's trying to do is clean up some other stuff so that it can now be just as dangerous and lethal as Ohio State that won at Penn State, Alabama that's mauled people, Clemson that's, by now the track record speaks for itself. Tram Dickerson L says, Justin Fields in the second half of the national championship game, we win that game. Listen, all I can say is I'm really glad Georgia's got Justin Fields. And all I can say is that I think that he's going to be a very dangerous weapon at LSU in games like that. And I feel the same way about Jake Fromm. All right, we got to get ready to go. We are late. Robert Aubrey Prosser says we have a great offensive line. Are you not looking at the holes they're making for our backs? Pass protection is getting there. I question some of the previous play calling, though. Robert, it sounds like you and I are on just different sides of this because I'm not seeing gigantic holes for this offensive line to run through, at least not consistently. Or I should say, I'm not seeing giant holes from the offensive line for running back to run through, at least not consistently. And I'm not seeing the pass protection that I would like to see Georgia get. I'm not putting blame on anybody, but I don't think that it's quite as optimistic of an assessment as you kind of describe it as. And when you say you question some of the play calling, I think some of the most curious play calls from Georgia have been the byproduct of not dominating at the line of scrimmage. Last year, we never heard a peep about Chaney's play calling because for the most part, Georgia was annihilating people at the line of scrimmage. Play calling is just a lot more sensible when you're doing 3rd and short stuff. When you're 2nd and 5, play calling is just a lot more sensible. It's hard to call a bad play in a short yardage situation. We've got the entire playbook at your disposal here. I think the more curious Georgia play calls thus far this season are almost all a byproduct of just an offensive line and a running game that's not quite what it was a year ago, but still has plenty of time to get there. Let me get a couple more comments. We'll get out of here. Let me get. All right. I'm sorry. I'm trying to pull this one up here. Sorry, y'all. Comments are coming really fast. I was going to get one. Let me get Billy Carey here. Says, B, would it be possible? Actually, Kyle Harrison. Whoa, these are coming in fast. Troy Sadowski, former Georgia tight end, says, this team lacks leadership. We need more players to turn it up a notch. I certainly think that leadership is the kind of thing that evolves over the course of time. We'll certainly see that. For those of you whose comments I tried to read and they got away from me too quick, I apologize for that. Tram Dickerson says the only thing that's better for Alabama is the quarterback. Obviously, right now, Tua looks really, really sharp. I think it's really hard to maintain that pace of play over the course of 15 games. All right. Comments are coming in fast. I apologize for not being able to read them as fast as they are coming in, but we appreciate you weighing in and appreciate your thoughts on all of this. If you want to hit me up on Twitter at DawgNation Daily, we can continue the conversation there. For now, though, I got to get ready to say goodbye. I will be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for another live edition of our program here, DawgNation Daily, presented by Marco's Pizza. We'll also have the podcast up and running for you here in just a couple of moments. We'll have DN90 in a bit as well with more Georgia coverage on the big news of the day. And look forward to seeing you back here, as I said, again tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. for another episode of DawgNation Daily Live, presented by Marco's Pizza. Y'all have a great day.